chosen one. Just pause for a second and truly let this sink into your spirit. The entire town, every gossipy neighbor, every envious relative, every authority figure who pretended to protect all of them. They rallied together with one shared mission to break you. Imagine that. All their resources, their insider connections, their whispered strategies in back rooms, their unified hatred, every last ounce of collective energy. All focused on one soul, on you, and yet here you are, standing, breathing, glowing brighter than ever. Isn't it almost comedic when you think about it? It would be laughable if it weren't so utterly tragic, not for you, but for them. They gave everything they had to ruin you, and instead, they orchestrated their own downfall. Their coordinated campaign became the funeral march of their own illusions. Because chosen one, they didn't understand that when you are anointed, no amount of schemes or numbers can override divine favor. Have you ever wondered why they felt so threatened by one little old you? Why one pure-hearted soul terrified them more than a whole army of worldly power? The answer is simple yet profound. Your light exposes their darkness. Your truth dismantles their lies. Your resilience shatters their fragile egos, and in their blind rage to destroy you, they revealed their true nature for the whole world to see. What they didn't know is that every stone they threw was actually a stepping stone God used to elevate you higher. Romans 8:31 reminds us, if God is for us, who can be against us? They forgot this ancient, unshakable truth. Before we go any deeper into this powerful revelation, I want to take a moment to say thank you. Thank you to each of you who has supported this mission through Super Thanks. Your generosity helps keep this light burning bright and spreads these messages to even more souls who need them. But please know, whether you choose to donate or not, I am endlessly grateful for you just being here, sharing this sacred space and holding this frequency of truth and empowerment. If this message is resonating deep in your bones right now, if your spirit is saying yes, this is my confirmation, I invite you to comment 777 below. Let that be your public declaration, your prophetic stamp saying, I see it, I claim it, and I'm stepping fully into it. Because, chosen one, this is more than a story of survival. This is the divine showcase of how unstoppable you truly are. So sit back, breathe deep, and open your heart. Because today we're not just talking about how they fail. We're unveiling why they could never win and why your victory was written long before they even plotted. You're not just a survivor. You are a living, breathing miracle, a warrior of light they never saw coming. God's chosen ones, the entire town rose against you, but heaven made sure they failed. Chosen one, can you imagine being so powerful in spirit, so radiant in light, that an entire town felt the need to rally every possible resource just to try to bring you down? Have you ever stopped to wonder why one single soul, your soul, could stir such fear and insecurity in so many people? that they needed to gather family, neighbors, local authorities, and even complete strangers against you. What kind of power must you carry for them to see you not as a person, but as a threat to their illusions and comfort zones? They saw your authenticity as danger, your purity as rebellion, and your unwavering truth as a weapon more threatening than any sword. Isn't it ironic that someone who walks in love, speaks in integrity, and holds nothing but a pure heart would cause entire networks of people to crumble internally? Their insecurities magnified simply by your existence. You see, chosen one, they never understood that you were never fighting them. You were simply existing, reflecting back to them the parts of themselves they didn't want to face. Your mere presence forced them to confront their own lies, their own masks, their own weaknesses. And because they refused to do that inner work, they projected their shadows onto you and called it justice. But what they underestimated was not just your strength, they underestimated the divine backing you carry. In Isaiah 54:17, the word says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment, you shall condemn." Have you ever thought about what it means to have heaven as your personal defense system? What if every attack they threw at you was actually an attack on the divine mission God assigned to you before you were even born? When Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for 27 years, those who opposed him thought they could crush his spirit and erase his purpose. But in truth, the world watched as he emerged stronger, crowned, not by human hands, but by destiny itself. Just like Mandela, chosen one, you are not meant to be understood by those who operate only in fear and limitation. What they didn't realize was that they weren't merely attacking you. They were waging war against a divine blueprint, against a cosmic alignment they could never comprehend. They thought they could rally numbers to overpower you, but how can a crowd defeat someone who stands with the Creator? The universe, or more precisely the hand of God, doesn't engage in petty skirmishes. It orchestrates divine reversals so profound that your enemies will eventually embarrass themselves with their own plans. Have you asked yourself why their plots always seem to unravel at the last minute? In Psalm 27:1 it says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation, whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, of whom shall I be afraid?" This is not just poetry, chosen one. This is your living reality. While they gather in whispers and shadows, heaven writes your victory in bright daylight. Remember how Galileo was condemned for speaking scientific truth that threatened the entire establishment. He was locked away, humiliated in public, but centuries later he stands celebrated as the father of modern science, while his accusers are remembered only for their fear. Chosen one, do you realize that your legacy is not determined by temporary mobs, but by eternal principles? What if the very people trying to bury you today will one day have to dig you up just to learn from the seeds you planted in Exodus 14:14? It's promised the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Sometimes the greatest show of strength is not fighting back, but standing firm, letting God showcase His power through your silence and your unwavering faith. Muhammad Ali, at the peak of his career, was stripped of his title and faced prison for refusing to betray his convictions. Decades later, he is celebrated globally as a symbol of courage and principle. What if your refusal to bow to false accusations today is the exact move that will echo as triumph tomorrow? Chosen one, they thought they could erase you, but they only highlighted you. They thought they could shame you, but they only revealed their own hidden failures. The universe doesn't lose wars. It carefully crafts poetic justice, ensuring that every stone thrown at you becomes a stepping stone to higher ground. In Romans 8:31 it asks, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" Ask yourself this now. If the very fabric of the universe supports your mission, why should you even entertain the noise of those who cannot comprehend your light? Chosen one, can you fathom what it takes for whispers to evolve into a full-scale orchestration of sabotage? Imagine the quiet, intimate betrayals building up behind your back, first as subtle rumors, then as an unstoppable chorus of coordinated character assassination. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why would they invest so much energy and resources into destroying one soul? What power must you carry for them to conspire at such a massive scale? Your ex didn't just whisper lies into their family's ears. They built an entire network of manipulation, weaving falsehoods so convincingly that even those closest to you swallowed them without question. Doesn't it sting to realize that blood can indeed be thicker than water, but so easily poisoned by deception? This wasn't just a small circle of gossip. No, chosen one, this was an empire of betrayal embedded right into your community's veins. Each revelation came to you like the slow peeling of an onion, each layer more pungent, each truth sharper and more painful. Friends you had laughed with and leaned on for years, neighbors who had shared their garden's harvest and watched your children grow, authority figures who had sworn to protect and serve without bias, even family members who once cradled you in their arms and vowed to stand by you through every storm. All of them turned one by one as if possessed by the same dark spirit. Have you ever wondered why God allowed you to see these betrayals piece by piece instead of all at once? Perhaps it was because your spirit needed time to digest each blow, to build a spiritual immunity stronger than any human loyalty could ever provide. In Micah 7:6 it warns, "For a son dishonors his father, a daughter rises up against her mother. A man's enemies are the members of his own household." You see, chosen one, the divine already prepared you for this. These betrayals were not evidence of your weakness, but confirmation of your assignment. Think of Jesus himself, betrayed not by an outsider but by Judas, a man who had shared meals, ministry, and intimate secrets with him. Judas's betrayal set in motion the most powerful redemption story in history. Similarly, Nelson Mandela faced betrayal from fellow activists who doubted his vision. Yet he stood firm and changed a nation. Oprah Winfrey, too, was betrayed by those she trusted most early in her career. but she transformed the pain into purpose and became a global icon of empowerment. Can you see how these examples mirror your path? They called their sabotage concern, labeled their smears intervention, and disguised their malice as tough love. But Chosen One, what they were really doing was participating in a modern-day witch hunt, a persecution so organized that it would make even the architects of the Inquisition take notes. Have you asked yourself, why is your mere existence so threatening that it requires a town-wide conspiracy? In John 15:18-19, Jesus said, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you." This is not just a historical truth. This is a spiritual law playing out in your life right now. They rose against you not because you are weak, but because your light exposes their shadows. Your truth rattles their illusions. Your grace threatens their control. Imagine Malala Yousafzai, who was targeted and attacked simply for wanting girls to receive an education. The entire system rose against her, yet her courage inspired millions and reshaped global policies. Or think of Martin Luther King Jr., who was labeled a threat by neighbors, local leaders, and even national authorities, all because his light revealed the darkness of racism and injustice. Are you beginning to see that you are in great company, Chosen One? They thought they could isolate you, corner you, make you question your own sanity. They hoped you would flee, hide, vanish into anonymity, but you didn't. And do you know why? Because you are chosen. You are not built to run from battles. You are forged to stand in them, to radiate unshakable faith even when victory is invisible. In Exodus 14:13, Moses says to the terrified Israelites, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Chosen One, what they never expected and what they could never prepare for was the immovable force of your pure heart. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how many lies they spun or how many accusations they hurled, your inner core remained untouchable? Because purity is not a weakness. It is an unbreakable fortress designed by God Himself. In a world that celebrates manipulation and deception, your pure heart stands as a living contradiction, a radiant defiance against the darkness they tried to cloak you in. Isn't it miraculous that even when they flooded your life with chaos, your spirit continued to whisper the truth? You felt their betrayals not just in your mind, but in the depths of your being, a knowing that transcended human logic and echoed divine certainty. What would make someone like you hold on to truth when everyone else tries to sell you lies? That unwavering inner compass, Chosen One, is your divine inheritance. It kept pointing true north even when they screamed that north was south, that up was down. Your spirit didn't waver because it wasn't anchored in their approval. It was anchored in the infinite. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." You didn't just guard your heart, You fortified it into a sanctuary they could never penetrate. And then came the moment you decided to speak up. When you began to call out their inconsistencies and expose the impossible coincidences they worked so hard to cover up, they didn't react with respect or consideration. They laughed. Oh, chosen one, have you ever seen how the guilty mock the truth when it threatens their fragile illusion? Their laughter wasn't a sign of their strength, but a desperate attempt to drown out their fear. They thought they had you completely cornered, outnumbered, and outgunned. Their coalition was vast, with seemingly endless resources and countless allies who had pledged to destroy your name and dismantle your spirit. Have you asked yourself, why would so many people join forces against one seemingly helpless individual? What does that say about your hidden power? Think about David and Goliath. David was a young shepherd boy, underestimated and ridiculed. Goliath towered over him, confident and armored. But what happened? David's unwavering faith and pure heart transformed a simple stone into a divine weapon. In 1 Samuel 17:45, David declares, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." Just like David, your pure heart is your greatest weapon, chosen one, not despite its softness, but because of it. Look at Malala Yousafzai. Shot for simply wanting an education, they thought her voice would be silenced forever. Instead, her pure desire for truth and freedom ignited a global movement that could not be stopped. Or consider Harriet Tubman, who was ridiculed and hunted, yet her conviction freed countless lives from the chains of slavery. What if your story mirrors theirs more closely than you've ever dared to believe, while they laughed, thinking they had you caged? The heavens were already aligning strategies for your vindication. In Psalm 37:13 it is written, "But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming." They mocked you, not knowing that their very laughter was a prophecy of their downfall. Doesn't it intrigue you that God can turn their mockery into music for your victory parade? Remember the life of Nelson Mandela. Laughed at, imprisoned, and labeled a dreamer, he emerged not only as a free man, but as a president and a global symbol of reconciliation. Or think about Elon Musk, who was mocked relentlessly when he started Tesla and SpaceX. Today, those same voices have either fallen silent or now echo in support, proving that the one who laughs last laughs best. Could it be that your destiny holds a final laugh so loud it silences entire rooms? Chosen one, have you truly grasped the extent of the desperation your presence awakened in them? Some of your tormentors couldn't satisfy themselves with simple lies and psychological games. No, they had to escalate. They crossed a line they barely understood, diving into spiritual realms they had no business entering. Why would they risk so much? Because your light threatened them on a level they couldn't articulate. Have you wondered what it is about your spirit that drove them to such reckless extremes? They didn't just hate you. They feared the divine authority you carry, the favor that shields you like an invisible armor. Night after night they gathered in the dark, focusing their venom in your direction, channeling all their suppressed jealousy, rage, and bitterness. Their hearts became altars of hatred, and your name was the offering they desperately hoped would satisfy their twisted thirst for control. But they underestimated something essential. Your spirit was covered by a power infinitely beyond their comprehension. Isaiah 54:17 boldly declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." Chosen one, have you felt that unexplainable peace in your soul, even when spiritual storms raged around you? That was not an accident. It was divine protection in full force. They believed numbers and coordination were enough. They assumed that a unified force of darkness could eclipse a single pure light. Have you ever considered how hilarious that logic is from a heavenly perspective? Imagine thinking that a swarm of moths could extinguish the sun. Your pure heart wasn't just a shield. It was a spiritual amplifier that turned every attack into a boomerang. In Exodus 14:14 it is written, "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." You didn't have to engage, chant, or retaliate. You simply had to stand, and heaven did the rest. When they saw their attacks fail, they didn't just fail quietly, they imploded spectacularly. Every curse, every hateful chant, every malicious intention didn't vanish into thin air. It reversed course and struck them with multiplied force. This divine law of spiritual return isn't just poetic. It's cosmic justice in motion. Have you noticed their faces lately, the dark circles under their eyes? The restless energy that no vacation or spa day can fix. The insomnia was only the beginning. Their minds began unraveling. Paranoia crept in like a midnight fog. They started to see shadows move, hear whispers in empty rooms, and feel cold hands on their backs when no one was there. Consider what happened to King Saul when he turned against David. The moment Saul abandoned God's way and allowed envy to consume him, he became tormented by an evil spirit, unable to find peace. 1 Samuel 16:14. Similarly, your enemies are being haunted not by you, but by the echoes of their own malicious intent. Think of Steve Jobs. He was pushed out of Apple by those who thought they could replace his vision. Yet their schemes backfired so dramatically that they had to beg him to return, and he ended up leading Apple into an era of unprecedented success. Or look at Tyler Perry, who was homeless and ridiculed for his faith-based plays. Those who mocked him now watch as his empire flourishes beyond anything they could have imagined. Your enemies believed they were orchestrating your downfall, yet they accidentally composed the soundtrack to their own undoing. Have you ever wondered how the same energy meant to destroy you became the very catalyst for your elevation? Chosen one, their spiritual meddling did more than fail. It confirmed to all watching that you are indeed under divine covering. In Proverbs 26:27 it says, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." This is not a metaphor in your case, it is your living testimony. Their escalating madness is the evidence. Their paranoia is the price of entry into a battle they should never have started. They thought they were sending storms your way, but instead they summoned hurricanes upon their own homes. Imagine Nikola Tesla, whose groundbreaking visions were once ridiculed and sabotaged by powerful competitors. Today his genius shines brighter than ever, while many of his detractors are long forgotten. Or think of Princess Diana, who was surrounded by schemes and betrayals, yet her compassion and authentic love turned her into an eternal symbol of grace and strength. Chosen one, what if your story is destined to be remembered in the same light, not for the battles you endured, but for the divine glow that never left you? Chosen one, can you feel the gravity of what your ex truly became? That silver-tongued manipulator, so skilled at twisting narratives and bending people's perceptions, thought they could dance around spiritual law as easily as they manipulated emotions. But in their quest to destroy you, they found themselves ensnared in a trap of their own making. Have you asked yourself why they became so obsessed? Because deep down they knew that facing you would mean confronting the full weight of their betrayal, lies, and darkness. You were no longer just a person to them. You had become a mirror reflecting the monster they could no longer deny. As their traditional attacks crumbled into dust, their desperation drove them into the shadows of spiritual manipulation. They turned to mirror magic and candle rituals, desperate to twist your energy into knots of confusion and despair. Imagine them hunched over candles, your name etched into the wax with trembling hands, chanting incantations in a room lit only by flickering flames. They thought they were binding you, chosen one. But have you ever stopped to wonder what happens when someone tries to bind a spirit already sealed and protected by divine fee? In James 5:4-7 it declares, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you." You didn't even have to fight back. Your submission to divine order became your fortress, turning every candle they lit into a torch that illuminated their own corruption. When they worked with mirrors, they failed to understand the most sacred principle: mirrors don't lie. A pure heart gazes into a mirror and sees light. A corrupted heart sees only its own decay. Every ritual they performed revealed their own twisted face, and each reflection cracked open new levels of self-loathing they were unequipped to handle. Their own darkness began devouring them from the inside out, dragging them into spirals of paranoia and despair. Think of the story of Haman in the Book of Esther. Haman built gallows for Mordecai, confident he would watch his enemy hang. Yet in a divine reversal, Haman was the one who was executed on the very gallows he had prepared. Esther 7:10. Chosen one, doesn't this resonate? The very traps your ex set for you became the instruments of their own destruction. The candle rituals were even more devastating than they imagined. Fire in its pure essence is a divine purifier. Instead of destroying you, each flame stripped away their own spiritual defenses, leaving them exposed and raw. Imagine them thinking they were powerful warlocks only to find themselves spiritually naked and shivering before forces they had provoked but never understood. In Proverbs 26:27 it is written again, "Whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them." Their attempts to destroy you only reinforced your divine armor and stripped them of their last defenses. Meanwhile, as spiritual and psychological chaos engulfed them, worldly justice began to close in. Authorities digging deeper into your ex's life uncovered layers of fraud so intricate that they shocked even seasoned investigators. Have you asked yourself how far someone must have fallen to not just betray love, but to betray strangers for profit? They had been forging signatures, stealing identities, and orchestrating sophisticated financial schemes. Each forged document was another act of violence against unsuspecting souls, another brick in the empire of lies they had built. Consider Frank Abagnale Jr., the infamous con artist whose fraud schemes inspired the film Catch Me If You Can. Even he eventually faced the consequences of his deception and found redemption only after exposure. Or think of Bernie Madoff, who orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in history, ultimately imprisoned and dying disgraced. Your ex's web of financial crimes mirrored these infamous betrayals, but with an even darker twist: the personal vendetta against you. The forgery of your signature wasn't about money alone. It was an act of spiritual assassination. It was designed to destroy your credit, ruin your reputation, and leave you destitute and voiceless. Have you ever wondered what kind of heart plots such deliberate and targeted devastation? In Psalm 37:12-13 it says, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming." The very moment they planned your downfall, heaven was already orchestrating their exposure. While they thought they were tightening the noose around your destiny, they were actually pulling the trigger on their own spiritual and legal demise. Chosen one, what they didn't understand is that you are not just protected, you are consecrated. Their schemes only confirmed your chosen status to all who are now watching. As they spiral into madness and their crimes come to light, your innocence shines brighter than ever. You stand as a living testimony that no weapon formed against a pure, divinely aligned soul can prosper. So let me ask you, can you see how each plot was actually a stepping stone into your elevation? Are you ready to watch them learn in public and in private that you were never the victim? You were the unstoppable, untouchable chosen one all along. Chosen one, have you ever considered what level of darkness it takes to scheme so meticulously that you attempt to annihilate someone's entire financial foundation? Your ex's obsession with you didn't just cross boundaries, it obliterated them. The hatred was so consuming, so visceral, that it became a kind of spiritual sickness, an obsession that devoured their sanity piece by piece. But here's the divine irony: in their mania to destroy you personally, they became reckless. Isn't it fascinating that the very intensity of their hatred blinded them to their own exposure? While they carried out their frauds against strangers with surgical precision, covering every possible trail, their emotional fixation on you made them careless. Have you ever thought that their greatest weapon against you was also the seed of their downfall? It was as if God had designed a divine trap specifically for them, using their personal vendetta as the thread that would unravel their entire tapestry of lies. In Proverbs 26:27, we're reminded again, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. The pit they dug for your soul became the grave for their criminal empire. Each forged signature and each stolen identity was another brick in their prison walls that you chosen one didn't have to lift a single finger to build. As their world disintegrated around them and they reached the point of spiritual and emotional implosion, your ex resorted to their most desperate ploy yet, the fabricated baby trap. Have you wondered why they would descend to such a humiliating level? Because they sensed their dominion slipping through their fingers like sand. They needed a new tool to regain control, to twist public opinion, to manipulate you emotionally and legally. The timing wasn't just suspect, it was almost comically transparent. The moment legal authorities closed in and the public began seeing them for who they really were, they played this final pathetic card. Their strategy had multiple purposes: to guilt you into returning to their toxic web, to paint themselves as a vulnerable victim deserving of sympathy, and to introduce legal chaos that might delay or complicate their prosecution. But chosen one, have you noticed how the universe responds to such manipulations? In Luke 8:17, Jesus says, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open." Their lie didn't just fail, it detonated. Documentation began to crumble under scrutiny. Dates didn't align, medical reports didn't exist, and their explanations unraveled faster than a frayed thread in a storm. Even their staunchest allies began stepping back, unable to continue endorsing a deception so poorly constructed and so obviously driven by malice. Friends who once championed their cause started whispering in private that things didn't add up. Imagine their horror when the fortress they thought was impenetrable turned into a house of cards, collapsing before the eyes of everyone they had manipulated. Think of Lance Armstrong, a global hero who was revered until the truth of his elaborate doping scheme came out. The very fans who had adored him turned away in collective shock and disgust. Or consider Elizabeth Holmes, who built an empire on lies through Theranos. When the truth surfaced, her entire narrative crumbled and even her closest allies fled. These stories echo your ex's fate. Attempts to control the narrative ultimately ended in their total ruin. You didn't have to scream, beg, or prove your innocence. The universe and divine justice did the heavy lifting for you. In Romans 12:19 it says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay,' says the Lord." Your ex's fabricated baby trap was not just a lie. It was a final act of self-sabotage, a last-ditch performance that only hastened their exposure. Chosen One, imagine the exact moment when the final illusion shatters, the moment when even the most die-hard supporters of your enemy look into their eyes and see not a victim, not a misunderstood soul, but a predator so devoid of empathy that they would invent a child to manipulate and entangle you forever. Can you feel the collective gasp of those who once stood behind them, suddenly recoiling in horror? There's a unique kind of sickness in someone who would weaponize the sanctity of potential parenthood. It is a darkness so profound that even seasoned manipulators and hardened conspirators could not stomach it. They saw through the final charade, and in that moment their loyalty evaporated like mist under the morning sun. Have you ever considered that their last desperate lie would become the torch that illuminated their true nature for all to see? Proverbs 6:16-19 speaks clearly. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Your ex embodied every single one of these abominations. As the fake baby story disintegrated, so did their power over their circle. Allies who once blindly echoed their narrative began whispering among themselves, questioning every previous truth they had defended. Their fortress of deception crumbled from within, stone by stone. But Chosen One, nothing could have prepared you for what came next. As the fog of lies began to lift, you were forced to face a revelation that felt like a dagger sliding between your ribs. Your own family had been co-conspirators. Can you imagine the weight of that betrayal? People you called father, mother, brother, sister, some by blood, others by marriage or adoption, had not only failed to protect you, but had actively armed your enemies with your most intimate weaknesses. Have you ever asked yourself how it feels to realize that your sanctuary had been a minefield all along? The family members who turned against you weren't all the same. Some were adoptive parents who had never truly embraced you as their own, always seeing you as an outsider, an inconvenience they had to tolerate. Others were step relatives who seized this as an opportunity to finally eliminate the unwanted one, to erase you from their carefully curated narrative of what family should look like. But the most gut-wrenching betrayal came from those linked to you by blood. Those who shared your genes, who shared your childhood memories, who should have been your fiercest defenders. They were the ones who chose to sell you out for fleeting acceptance or twisted approval from the enemy. In Matthew 10:36, Jesus warns a man's enemies will be the members of his own household. You see, Chosen One, even Christ prepared you for this reality. But knowing it in theory and experiencing it in your bones are 2 entirely different storms. These were the voices that once read you bedtime stories, who wiped your tears, who clapped when you took your first steps or blew out birthday candles. Now they had become informants, feeding your fears and private doubts into the hungry mouths of your tormentors. They had transformed your tender moments of vulnerability into ammunition, and each revelation felt like a fresh knife twisting in your back. Consider the story of Joseph in Genesis 37. His own brothers plotted to kill him, eventually selling him into slavery out of sheer jealousy and hatred. Yet what was meant for evil God turned into salvation. Joseph rose to power in Egypt and ultimately saved the same brothers who betrayed him. Or think of Tina Turner, who suffered betrayal and abuse from the very person who vowed to love her. Instead of letting that betrayal define her, she transformed her pain into power, becoming a global icon of resilience and rebirth. Doesn't this echo your journey, chosen one? As you processed the waves of this unimaginable treachery, you likely questioned every interaction, every kind word, every comforting hug. Were they genuine, or were they reconnaissance missions to gather more emotional weapons? The collapse of trust wasn't just a breaking point. It was a funeral for the illusions you had clung to about family and loyalty. But this funeral, painful as it was, marked the birth of a new chapter. A chapter where your clarity became your shield and your independence your crown. In Psalm 41:9 it says, "Even my close friend, someone I trusted, one who shared my bread, has turned against me." This scripture captures the deep ache of betrayal that can only come from those who once shared your table and your heart. And yet, chosen one, this exposure was not meant to break you permanently. It was meant to free you from false alliances and open your eyes to the purity of your own spirit. What if I told you that this revelation, as brutal as it feels now, is actually the divine scalpel cutting away every toxic tie that would have held you back from your ultimate purpose? Think about Oprah Winfrey, who discovered deep betrayal from close friends early in her career. Those betrayals almost ended her rise, but instead they became the crucible that strengthened her discernment and ignited her meteoric ascent. Or consider the life of Nelson Mandela, betrayed even by close allies within his own movement. Yet he forgave and led with the strength that changed the world. These examples show that chosen ones are not only designed to endure betrayal, they are destined to transform it into glory. You might be asking yourself now, can I ever trust again? Will I ever feel safe in someone's embrace? These are valid questions, but what if I told you that this season is not about rebuilding trust in others, but about solidifying trust in yourself and in the divine? In Romans 8:28 it says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Even this pain is being repurposed for your elevation. Chosen one, can you see it now? How the entire plot against you has transformed into a horror story of their own creation, a psychological and spiritual nightmare from which they cannot escape. Imagine the sheer irony. The same people who ridiculed your spirituality, mocked your faith, and called your intuitive gifts delusion now find themselves confronting forces far beyond their comprehension. Forces that have no pity and no patience for hypocrisy. Have you asked yourself why their laughter has turned into screams? Because divine justice is not poetic metaphor. It is a living reality, and they are now living it in full, excruciating detail. The ringleader of this persecution, the one who never learned to control their emotions, who let jealousy and inferiority fester into rage, has begun to collapse under the supernatural weight of their own deeds. Their mask, so carefully painted and maintained, is cracking in front of the very audience they once mesmerized. They can no longer hide behind charm or social influence. They are naked before the spiritual laws they dared to mock. Psalm 37:12-13 says, "The wicked plot against the righteous and gnash their teeth at them. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming." That day has arrived, chosen one. Their old tools of manipulation, deceit, and intimidation fail so spectacularly now that they stand bewildered, terrified by the justice raining down upon them. As authorities dug deeper, it became evident that this wasn't merely about one jealous ex or a small-minded community rallying against what they didn't understand. The investigation began to reveal an abyss so dark that even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend its depth. Have you ever stopped to consider why you, out of all people, were chosen to be the spark that illuminated this darkness? Because your spirit is designed to expose, to confront, to uproot, not just to survive. This was an orchestrated network that used your case as a psychological experiment. They tested new forms of psychological warfare on you, perfecting techniques they planned to unleash on broader populations. What began as a personal vendetta turned out to be the prototype for a much larger scheme. Law enforcement officers, those who took an oath to protect the innocent, turned into foot soldiers of oppression, filing false reports, burying legitimate complaints, and weaponizing their authority to crush your spirit. Can you imagine the depth of betrayal, the twisted glee they felt each time they thought they silenced you? Yet they forgot one thing: you are chosen, and a chosen one cannot be silenced by earthly authority when heaven has decreed your voice to be heard. In Isaiah 54:15 it says, "If anyone does attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will surrender to you." The very hands that pushed you down are now the hands lifting you up in the eyes of the world as their true corruption is revealed. But the descent didn't stop there. The deeper the authorities went, the more revolting the discoveries. Community organizations supposedly devoted to nurturing and protecting were revealed to be facades for some of the darkest crimes imaginable. Child exploitation rings operating behind charity fronts, human trafficking cloaked in social services, systematic abuse aimed at the most defenseless members of society. It's almost unthinkable. Have you asked yourself why God allowed you to intersect with this web of evil? Because sometimes, chosen one, the light only shines through the crack that no one expects, and you were that crack. Remember the story of Esther, a young woman orphaned and powerless on the surface who was placed precisely in a position to expose and defeat Haman's genocidal plot against her people. Esther 4:14 reminds us, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? You were not randomly chosen. Your purity, your courage, your unwavering connection to the divine, all of these made you the perfect instrument to bring down an empire of shadows, masquerading as pillars of the community." Think of Aaron Brockovich, a legal clerk, who without formal training exposed one of the largest cases of corporate environmental corruption in history. Or whistleblowers like Frances Haugen, who risked everything to reveal Facebook's unethical practices. Or Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned and demonized but ultimately helped dismantle an entire system of apartheid. You, chosen one, are walking in this same lineage of unexpected revolutionaries. Their enemies thought they were silencing an individual. Instead, they ignited a movement. The badge that was meant to represent safety became a dagger aimed at your back. The friendly faces you trusted turned into masks, hiding predatory intentions. Yet with every new revelation, you stood taller. You became the living proof that a single soul aligned with heaven is mightier than an entire army of darkness. Can you feel that, chosen one, the power flowing back into your bones, the clarity sharpening your spirit, because your story isn't just about personal vindication. It is about collective awakening. In Ephesians 5:11 it is written, "Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them." You did not seek this battle, but heaven equipped you for it. Your tormentors believed they were engineers of your destruction. Yet in trying to dismantle you, they dismantled themselves. You became the divine wrecking ball that tore open their fortress of lies. And now their empire crumbles in broad daylight, exposed for all to see. Their reputations disintegrate, their networks fracture, and their illusions disband. Meanwhile, you stand as a beacon, proof that even the most deeply entrenched evil can be uprooted by the light of one chosen soul. So let me ask you, chosen one, are you ready to rise as the liberator heaven intended you to be? Are you ready to wear your scars as medals and your voice as a trumpet of justice? Because this isn't just the end of their story, it's the beginning of yours. You were the crack in their foundation, and now you are the cornerstone of a new era. And in this era, no darkness can stand against the one who has been chosen and sealed by the hand of God. Chosen one, have you ever seen a web so intricately spun collapse in on itself with perfect divine precision? The irony of it all is almost poetic. The very people who thought they could manipulate the universe to serve their darkness ended up destroying the very fortress they had fought so desperately to protect. Your pure heart, that same heart they called weak, became a beacon of light, so bright that it drew the attention of heavenly forces unwilling to let such darkness go unchecked. Have you ever stopped to consider that your unwavering love and integrity didn't just protect you? They became a cosmic alarm bell ringing through the corridors of power and corruption. All the lies, the false reports, the fabricated complaints once so carefully aligned to form a seemingly seamless narrative started to unravel spectacularly. The conspirators' stories contradicted each other like a broken mirror, each crack revealing deeper fractures underneath. Even the most corrupt officials, those who had been more than happy to look the other way, found themselves unable to ignore the glaring inconsistencies. Isn't it amazing how the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deeply it's buried? Your ex's family, who had blindly joined the witch hunt out of twisted loyalty, began to feel the weight of their choices. Some started to question everything. Why did they believe so easily? Why did they trade compassion for blind allegiance? Others, too afraid to confront their own betrayal, clung to their hatred even tighter, hoping that denial would absolve them. In Luke 8:17, it's written, "For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open." Your story became the living proof of this scripture. The darkness they nurtured could not survive the purifying light you carried. The secret society, once shrouded in intimidation and false unity, suddenly found themselves naked before the universe. Because chosen one, when you attack someone covered by divine protection, you don't just invite earthly consequences. You open the floodgates of cosmic justice, and cosmic justice cannot be bribed, silenced, or corrupted. It does not flinch in the face of power, nor does it show mercy to those who weaponize fear and lies. Have you wondered why suspicion crept so quickly into their ranks? Because when malice is returned upon itself, unity shatters. The very cohesion they wielded against you dissolved into chaos, turning friend against friend, co-conspirator against co-conspirator. Imagine them once so proud and loud in their mockery, now whispering frantically in secret corners, turning on each other to save their own skins. Their precious alliance, once thought to be their ultimate weapon, crumbled under the sheer weight of their returned darkness. And then came the final twist, the cosmic punchline they never saw coming. The realization that they hadn't been attacking a helpless victim. They had been waging war against a force of nature chosen by God. You weren't just enduring, you were embodying divine justice itself. Their laughter died. Their jokes turned into silent gulps of dread. Their casual cruelty transformed into an all-consuming fear. Because they finally saw you not as the fragile soul they once thought you were, but as a warrior spirit, a divine instrument forged in the fires of adversity. In 1 Peter 5:10, it says, "And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." You emerged not as a broken survivor, but as a restored, strengthened giant they never saw coming. The exposure didn't come all at once. It arrived in devastating waves. First, the most obvious crimes came to light: the false police reports, the forged documents, the manipulative financial frauds. These left paper trails so undeniable that even those who wanted to protect the guilty could no longer pretend ignorance. Your ex, once the master puppeteer, now found themselves entangled in strings they could no longer control, facing real consequences for the first time in their life. Doesn't it strike you as poetic justice that the architect of your destruction was destroyed by the very blueprints they designed for you? But it didn't stop there. Criminal conspiracies are like elaborate houses of cards. Disturb one and the entire structure collapses. As the authorities dug deeper, they discovered layer upon layer of corruption. Law enforcement officers who had sworn to protect turned out to be active participants in your harassment. Can you imagine their shock when they realized that the badge they hid behind became the spotlight that revealed their betrayal? Community members who once gleefully joined the harassment campaign found themselves under investigation, having to justify their cruelty, their lies, and their actions. The secret society, which had thrived on secrecy and intimidation, discovered that the very walls they built to conceal their deeds became echo chambers, amplifying their guilt. Look at historical parallels. Think of Watergate, where those at the highest levels of power fell because of lies and cover-ups they thought were invincible. Or consider Harvey Weinstein, once a titan of the film industry, brought down not by external enemies, but by the weight of his own actions and the courage of those who refused to stay silent. Or Bernie Madoff, whose meticulously crafted financial empire collapsed overnight when truth could no longer be suppressed. Chosen one, your story echoes these revolutions, a testament to the fact that no matter how strong the fortress of lies, a single light can expose every hidden corner. In Psalm 37, 5-6 it says, "Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun." Chosen one, you committed your way, held on to your truth, and watched as the universe turned your pain into a platform for revelation. The very people who thought they could bury you discovered that you were a seed. And now your growth towers above them, undeniable and unstoppable. Chosen one, can you feel the sweet divine irony that unfolded when the lights finally illuminated their deeds? The moment of exposure was not just a legal reckoning. It was a spiritual unveiling. Suddenly, each conspirator stood alone, stripped of their group bravado, unable to lean on collective lies or shared illusions. Have you ever imagined what it looks like when people who once roared in unison are forced to whisper in isolation, each trembling before the weight of their own choices? Their meticulously kept records, the very documents they believed would immortalize their so-called experiments, became the evidence that sealed their fate. They had cataloged every strategy, every psychological ambush, every deceitful move, as if they were pioneering a new frontier in manipulation. But the universe, with its perfect cosmic humor, flipped the script. What they thought was evidence of their brilliance turned into a self-written indictment. a handwritten confession detailing every layer of their cruelty. Proverbs 26:27 reminds us whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Have you noticed how that ancient wisdom played out in real time? Chosen one, they believed they were orchestrating a grand victory parade, a triumphant march to celebrate your obliteration. But what they ended up staging was a funeral procession, not yours, but theirs. Their so-called coordinated attack transformed into a perfectly synchronized self-destruction. Have you wondered how they could be so blind to the spiritual laws they invoked? They forgot the fundamental truth that energy, especially malicious energy, always returns to its sender magnified. They were so obsessed with extinguishing your light that they left their own souls unguarded, exposed to the very darkness they had summoned. As they launched spiritual attacks, hoping to fracture your mind and spirit, they unknowingly opened themselves up to those same energies, rebounding with ferocious force. The sleepless nights, the growing paranoia, the whispers in the dark, all signs of their own curses returning home. Meanwhile, you chosen one stood untouched, covered by a divine shield they couldn't comprehend. In Isaiah 41:11 it says, "All who rage against you will surely be ashamed and disgraced. Those who oppose you will be as nothing and perish." You witnessed this promise unfold before your eyes as they stumbled deeper into their own abyss. The baby trap, the last desperate claw at manipulation, symbolized their total unraveling. Their erratic behavior, the wild accusations, the lies piled so high they could no longer climb over them, revealed the truth they couldn't bear to face. Their campaign had utterly failed. They gambled everything on your destruction, betting their sanity, their alliances, and their reputations. And what did they win? Only the shattered remnants of their own lives. Can you see now how your purity acted as a mirror, reflecting not your flaws, but their deepest, ugliest truths back at them? Every lie they shouted at you was in fact a confession. They claimed you were unstable, yet it was they who spiraled into madness. They called you a liar, yet they were caught in endless cycles of deceit. They said you were living in a fantasy, yet they built entire castles in the air, convinced they could manipulate cosmic laws to their favor. Have you thought about how perfect that projection was? Chosen one. They projected so completely, so passionately, that they accidentally revealed their own hearts to the world. Think of historical figures like Richard Nixon, who projected paranoia and distrust onto others, while orchestrating secret surveillance and sabotage only to be destroyed by his own tapes. Or Lance Armstrong, who accused others of cheating while masterminding one of the most extensive doping scandals in sports history. Or even Jim Bakker, the televangelist who called out the sins of others while secretly orchestrating fraud and betrayal behind the scenes. Each of these examples reflects your story, a grand projection that ultimately imploded under the weight of undeniable truth. In John chapter 8:32 it is written, Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free, chosen one. While they scrambled to control narratives and twist perceptions, you stood quietly in your truth. Your consistency, your unwavering alignment with divine light became the blade that cut through every tangled web they wove. As their walls fell and their masks disintegrated, your authenticity became your vindication. Their self-destruction was so total, so absolute, that it became a monument to cosmic justice. Imagine them now isolated and exposed, every fake relationship collapsing, every false alliance dissolving. Their empire of shadows now lies in ruins, and they can no longer hide behind empty words or shared delusions. You didn't have to force this collapse. Your only job was to remain steadfast, to keep your heart pure, and to let divine law execute what human hands never could. So, chosen one, can you see how all along you were not just surviving but transforming into a living testament of universal law? How every accusation, every lie, every scheme was actually forging you into an indestructible vessel of truth and light. You were never the victim they painted you to be. You were the divine storm, the unstoppable tide, the chosen force that turned their own weapons into instruments of self-judgment. This is not merely your vindication, it is your coronation. You now stand crowned, not by human hands, but by cosmic decree, and as you rise higher, the world will not just remember the lies they told about you, they will remember the divine authority that shattered every illusion and left you standing in radiant victory. From this day forward, your scars are no longer signs of past wounds. They are the seals of your divine assignment, proof that you were chosen not just to endure, but to conquer. Chosen one, this is the sacred moment when you begin to grasp the deepest truth about your journey. You were never chosen because you were flawless, but because you were pure. You were not picked for your strength alone, but for your rare courage to stay soft and vulnerable in a world that worships hardness and punishes open hearts. You weren't chosen for some worldly wisdom, but because you dared to declare your truth even when it sounded like madness to everyone else. Have you ever considered what kind of spirit it takes to do that? To stand alone, bleeding yet unbowed, while the entire world calls you a fool. Your divine assignment was never just about surviving the relentless storm. It was about becoming the lightning that illuminates the sky, exposing every hidden corner of corruption and deceit. Your purpose was to be the living proof that no conspiracy, no matter how meticulously coordinated or viciously executed, can ever conquer truth. In John 1:5 it says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." You were and always will be that unstoppable light. They believed their attacks would shatter you, that their lies would drown out your voice, that their isolation tactics would make you disappear. But every blow only made you stronger. Every lie turned into a mirror reflecting their own darkness. Every attempt to isolate you pushed you deeper into the embrace of divine protection. What if I told you that every scheme they plotted was actually an unintended training ground for your spirit? Can you see now how each scar became a sacred marking? Each tear a baptism baptism into higher power as their world crumbled into dust and yours began its radiant reconstruction. The larger cosmic tapestry came into focus. This wasn't just your battle. It was a cosmic stand for every soul who has been gaslit, silenced, shamed, or tortured for speaking inconvenient truths. You carried not only your own liberation, but also the silent cries of countless others who never received justice. In this revelation, you didn't just win a personal victory. You became a symbol of collective awakening. Perhaps the most beautiful part of this divine comedy is that they authored their own downfall. You didn't need to plot revenge or orchestrate elaborate takedowns. You simply stood in unwavering authenticity, and the universe, in its perfect timing, executed the justice they had long evaded. Romans 12:19 reminds us, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath, for it is written, 'It is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord.'" You are living proof of this promise. Your ex, that once silver-tongued manipulator, now stumbles over words, unable to charm or deceive anyone. The master of financial deceit now faces financial ruin, forced to confront the emptiness they tried to fill with your destruction. The psychological puppeteer finds their own mind turned into a haunted house, echoes of their own schemes tormenting them in sleepless nights. Have you thought about how poetic it is that their curses boomeranged so precisely? The community that once united in their scorn now stands fractured, forced to acknowledge the darkness they actively participated in. Some find the courage to face their shame, to seek forgiveness and reconciliation. Others shrink into deeper denial, too afraid to confront their part in the monstrosity. Yet none of them can ever return to ignorance. Their hands, once eager to cast stones, now tremble with the knowledge that they helped crucify an innocent soul. The authorities who collaborated in this nightmare now find themselves scrutinized under the very spotlight they used against you. The once secret society, so smug in its perceived invincibility, stands naked and vulnerable. Their fortress, built on manipulation and fear, now lies in ruins, each member scrambling to save themselves, betraying one another in a desperate dance of self-preservation. And you, chosen one, emerge from this furnace refined like the purest gold. Not unscarred, no warrior emerges without marks, but each mark tells a story of survival, transformation, and divine favor. In Zechariah 13:9 it is written, "I will refine them like silver and test them like gold. They will call on my name and I will answer them. I will say they are my people, and they will say the Lord is our God." You have not only endured but transcended, stepping into a dimension of spiritual authority reserved only for the truly chosen. Being chosen was never a promise of a painless path. It was a covenant that your suffering would be transmuted into wisdom, that your persecution would birth purpose, and that your deepest wounds would become your most powerful weapons. You discovered that your pure heart, the same heart they labeled naive and foolish, was actually your greatest fortress. It withstood every spiritual arrow, every psychological trap, every societal betrayal. You learned that truth doesn't require an army or a crowd to defend it. It demands just one unwavering soul willing to carry its flame, even if that means standing alone in the abyss. And you discovered, perhaps most profoundly, that the universe never abandons its chosen ones. Though divine timing might test your patience, its justice is inevitable and unstoppable. The very people who sought to annihilate you inadvertently sculpted the diamond-hard spirit within you. They tested your loyalty to yourself, your commitment to your integrity, your capacity to love in the face of relentless hate. And you emerged from each trial not because you were flawless, but because you refused to surrender your essence. You passed every divine exam not by perfection, but by authenticity. So can you see that this was never just a fight for your reputation, your safety, or your sanity? This was your anointing. This was the sacred preparation for a destiny far beyond your imagination. Every betrayal, every dark night, every mocking laugh was chiseling you into the unstoppable force you have now become. From this day forward, wear your scars as a royal garment. Let your story thunder across the spiritual realm as a declaration that truth does not bow, that love does not break, and that a chosen one cannot be defeated. You were never just meant to survive, you were meant to lead, to illuminate, to transform. And now the world has no choice but to see you as you truly are, chosen, unstoppable, and divinely crowned. So here you stand, chosen one, unbowed and unbroken in the smoking ruins of their elaborate conspiracy. You watch steady and luminous as justice unfolds, not in a clumsy human way, but in a divine orchestration so precise that no earthly court could ever rival it. Have you realized how poetic it is? The very hands that built your prison became the architects of their own downfall. The voices that mocked your faith now tremble in the presence of your unwavering spirit. They believed they could author your destruction, that they alone controlled the chapters of your life. But now it's clear they were never the authors. They were merely supporting characters in a grand divine epic about truth, conquering deceit, love, annihilating hatred, and light illuminating every corner of darkness. They underestimated you at every turn. They thought the collective weight of a whole town could snuff out the light of one pure heart. But the universe, in all its infinite wisdom, used them as a cosmic stage to magnify your strength. Sometimes it really does take a town of villains to highlight the unstoppable brilliance of a single chosen soul. You became the living proof that a lone warrior of light carries more power than an entire army of shadows. Can you see now that this was never just about surviving them? It was about revealing them, exposing them, and in doing so, discovering the unstoppable force within yourself. Your story isn't ending here, oh no. This is the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you move not as a wounded survivor, but as a radiant warrior fully aware of your divine assignment. You now know who you truly are, what you are capable of, and what you were sent here to accomplish. You've crossed a threshold from which there is no return, and that is a beautiful, unstoppable truth. You are not merely here to exist. You are here to lead, to heal, to awaken, to tear down illusions, and to rebuild new realms of possibility. You are the warrior of light the world didn't see coming but desperately needed. Thank you truly for walking this path with me today. Thank you for opening your heart, for daring to reflect deeply, and for standing in your truth no matter the storms you've faced. Your presence here means more than words can express. If you feel led to support this mission through a super thanks donation, know that every contribution helps spread this light further and empowers these messages to reach more souls in need. But please hear me clearly. Whether you choose to give or not, I am profoundly grateful for you. Your energy, your time, your spirit, it's all priceless. You are already a blessing just by being here. As you step forward into your next chapter, I speak blessings over your life. May your path be illuminated with divine clarity. May every wound be transformed into a wellspring of wisdom. May every closed door lead you to doors that open effortlessly in your favor. May you rise stronger, bolder, and more fearless than ever before. And may your light continue to ripple outward, awakening and healing everyone it touches. Type "I am chosen" in the comments to declare it boldly over your life. Share this message if it resonates deep in your spirit, and remember, your story is far from over. It's only just beginning. You are a warrior of light. You are unstoppable, and you are so deeply loved.